The Rams have a ton of action on the first day of the legal tampering period along the offensive line. What does that mean for their chances to repeat as Super Bowl champions?
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. New listeners, welcome on in to Locked On Rams, your source for all of your Rams information on a daily basis. My name is Travis Rogers. I host the Rams pregame show, halftime show, and postgame show on their flagship station, ESPN 710, right here in Los Angeles, and have done it since the Rams came back to LA way back in 2016, all the way up to their Super Bowl championship just a couple of weeks ago. So we've got a lot to get to on today's podcast. We're going to talk about some of that movement along the offensive line here in just a second. I also want to talk about how some of the Super Bowl odds and the MVP odds have been shuffled since the return of Tom Brady. That's coming up in just a little bit. And then I want to get into a little Super Bowl halftime show flashback in Evan McPherson watching the show. Apparently that is still a thing going on in and around the Cincinnati Bengals. So we'll get to that as well. But let's start on the offensive line, where three different things happened for the Rams today. I should say four different things. They were able to hold on to three of their offensive linemen. One of them is headed down the road. Let's start with the guys that they're going to keep, and let's start with Brian Allen right out of the chute. Brian Allen signs a 3-year, $24 million contract. Of course, Brian Allen is their center. He was the guy that played at that position for them all season long, all playoff season long, and graded out to be kind of one of the top third centers in the NFL this last center. It's really hard to quantify exactly what he brings. I mean, I know you can look at like PFF win rates and win probabilities and all of these sorts of things, and I know that there are some metrics that go along with it. But I think this was a particularly important person that they bring back because of the relationship that he has with Matt Stafford, because he is the one that's going to assign some of those line protections. He's the one that's going to shift something from one side to the other, that he's going to make sure that Matthew Stafford is well taken care of and that those guys are working on the same page. That is something that only comes with time. That will get better with time. We talk so much about the relationship between the quarterbacks and the wide receivers, the quarterbacks and the tight ends, the quarterbacks and the head coach, right? Just so they're all on the same page, they're all speaking the same language, they can kind of work in this shorthand that comes along with time spent together. We talked so much about Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford and how they were able to accelerate that shorthand by spending so much time together during the offseason, during weeks leading up to games. And then by the time you got to games, they were able to communicate very, very effectively, like they've been together for multiple years, as opposed to a few months when they got thrown together in training camp. This is not unlike that. Now, maybe it's not nearly as glamorous as being Cooper Kupp or being Odell Beckham Jr. or Robert Woods or any of these guys. But having him in that middle of the line, I think, is very good news for the Rams moving forward. I think that he kind of solidifies the whole thing. And the way that the Rams play with that zone blocking scheme, this is somebody that needs to know exactly what else is going on along the line and not having to change that out, not having to teach somebody a new system, and being able to roll with arguably, other than the left tackle, maybe the most important position on the offensive line, and keeping him where he needs to be. I think that's very good news that they did not lose Brian Allen to free agency, because this is one of the guys that I think would have been heavily sought after. So the Rams went out of their way to make sure that they got that taken care of today. And just to kind of a point of clarification, teams can re-sign their own players starting today, right? Teams can sign players from other teams. Like you're seeing some reports that players, like for instance, Christian Kirk from Arizona is going to go to Jacksonville, and that the numbers are reported, the term is reported, all of these things. Those can't be official until Wednesday when the new league year opens. So there's always the chance that somebody decides, you know what, on second thought, I'm going to come back. Think DeAndre Jordan in basketball a million years ago. We went to Dallas, decided then wasn't going to go to Dallas, and then came back to the Clippers. Kind of sort of the same thing there. So Brian Allen is going to stay. The other player that is going to stay, and I think that this is a huge deal, is Joe Noteboom is coming back as well. He has a 3-year deal that could be worth as much as $47.5 million. A little bit less than that, of course, is the guaranteed money, which is the money that matters the most in the NFL. But this is another player that I don't want to say the Rams couldn't have lived without, but I would have been very disappointed to see him go. This is somebody that has proven to be incredibly versatile, that can play on both sides of the offensive line, can play really 4 different positions if you really have him to. But let's be honest, there is probably a, what are we talking, 80, 90% chance that this is going to be your starting left tackle next year. And while maybe he has not been your guy at that position night in and night out, game in and game out, season in and season out over the last several years, because Andrew Whitworth has proven to be, the Incredible Hulk, and he just never goes down. He never misses games. He continues to play at a high level. They drafted Joe Noteboom to take his place several years ago. Well, it feels like we're finally at that point. Now, never say never with Andrew Whitworth. We'll see how that shakes out over the course of the next couple of days and weeks. But Joe Noteboom coming back there, it feels like that's probably his position. And that's good news, because it's not just a new left tackle. It's a new old left tackle, if that makes any sense. This is somebody that has played there. When Whitworth got hurt last year, he filled in very well. When he had to miss some plays here or there, a game here and there this season, he played very well. This is somebody that you can put on the other side of the line. This is somebody that can play guard if you need to do it, and he's played really well at all of these spots. And again, a lot like Brian Allen, it isn't that you have to bring somebody else in and teach them an entirely different system, an entirely different verbiage, an entirely different language, and you're literally starting from square one. You can drop Joe Noteboom in there, and while he may not have been a night in and night out starter for this team for the last few years, there's nothing that you can throw at him that he's not ready for. Very, very useful player, a very, very good player. I mean, again, like I said, this is somebody that was drafted to be your starting left tackle a few years ago. Maybe it took a little bit longer than he likes. Nice to see him get his money, and certainly somebody that's going to be able to slide in and do a very good job at that spot, assuming, and it's an assumption, that Andrew Whitworth doesn't come back, because the longer you go without hearing, it's kind of the opposite of Tom Brady, right? Tom Brady, right at the end of the season, I'm done. I'm out of here. I want to go spend time with my family. Okay, fine, cool. How did that go? Welcome back. Come on in. We'll get to that in the second segment here in a little bit about how it's changed the odds. But Andrew Whitworth has always said, I'm going to take some time to think about this. So I think if, the longer it goes, I think it's probably more likely that he decides to come back. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think he's going to come back. He's played an incredibly violent position for an incredibly long period of time and seems to be in a pretty good place for it. He's ready to go, Super Bowl championship, all the stuff that writes that perfect ending for him. That being said, he hasn't said he's not coming back yet, so we'll see. But in the event that he does decide to go do something else, go work in the community, go work in TV, go do whatever it is that Andrew Whitworth wants to do, he could have limitless options, really. Joe Noteboom's ready to slide in there and do his thing as well. Now, there's also Coleman Shelton, who's going to come back as well. Now, maybe not somebody who you might be as familiar with, but this is somebody that has played for them periodically at a handful of different positions along the offensive line. Probably not going to be a starter, but this is depth that you need. Like, the Rams were very fortunate to be pretty healthy along the offensive line most of the season last year, but there's going to come times where you're going to have to slide some guys in there. They're going to have to perform on short notice, that maybe you're going to have to perform at a position that might not be their very first position. And Shelton's proven to be one of those guys that can give you that line depth, and certainly a nice deal for him too, a 2-year deal that comes along with it. So not only did the Rams keep a starter in Allen, keep a very probable starter in Joe Noteboom, but they maintained some depth along the way as well. Now, the one that's going out, like I mentioned, Austin Corbett, he was the other one up for free agency. The Carolina Panthers apparently have made him an offer that he has accepted. Like I mentioned, until Wednesday, it doesn't become official, but it does look like the Rams are at least going to have to replace one player on that offensive line. That, of course, last year was guard Austin Corbett. So they're going to have to find a new guy there. Maybe it's Shelton. We'll see. Maybe they go into the draft and find a position there. Maybe it's free agency. Maybe it's a trade. We know that the Rams are very good at filling these holes along the way, but that is a hole. Remember, he came in from Cleveland a couple of years ago, and since they got him from the Browns, he's been a good player for the Rams. Maybe not an all-pro caliber player, maybe not, an all-NFL caliber player, but a very functional player. That entire offensive line got a little bit maligned during the middle of the season when they had the rough month of November, but really the first part of the season and certainly towards the end of the season, more than good enough to hold their own. And, of course, they win the Lombardi Trophy and the Super Bowl championship. So 3 guys coming back to L.A., 1 guy, Austin Corbett, going to Carolina to play for the Panthers. So pretty good news for the Rams. 3 of those guys, 2 of them in particular, probably starters on that offensive line. 1 for sure in Allen, and Noteboom's probably 90-95% to be a starter as well. So a pretty productive day for the Rams on the first day where you can re-sign your own player. So good news for the Rams there. Speaking of teams that have been able to hold on to some of their old players, that's where Tom Brady comes in. our friends at Bet Online, some of the odds that have changed from his return, both in the MVP and the Super Bowl. I want to get into that in just a little bit. But speaking of our friends at Bet Online, you can find all of these kind of stuff. Like I'm going to talk to you about MVP odds and Super Bowl championship odds, all of the football stuff that we all do. But it's that time of year again, right? It's college basketball time. The tournament is finally here. All your latest odds, your contests, your player props, betonline.net. #1 source for all your sports betting needs and information, and it remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news all season long. Maybe you're not a basketball person. Okay, that's fine. BetOnline has you covered for all of your other sports as well. Sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. So head to the website today and use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. And thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every day. Make sure you're following Locked On NFL, Locked On Experts, covering the biggest stories around the NFL every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. Just like Locked On Rams, it too is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, so I am pulling these numbers straight from Bet Online, right? These numbers have changed a little bit over the course of the last day or two. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, until they had Tom Brady say, you know what, the idea of going to the park every day with my kids or driving them to school or doing whatever it is you do with your kids, however old his kids are. Quick little story. There was a time when I was still drawing an income, but I was not actively employed. Okay, I had a job that was no longer my job, but my contract ran a little longer than that. So I had money coming in. And I didn't have something to do every day. I didn't have a job every day. I had young children. I think my oldest was 9 or 10 at the time. And it was great for a week, maybe a month. And then all of a sudden you realize why people need to go to work every day, Tom Brady included. I know he's not doing it for the money, but having a purpose to go out and do something every single day is pretty important. So I just think that has a lot to do with why he decided to come back. And here's the other part as well. They're going to be pretty good. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, prior to Tom Brady making the announcement that he's going to come back, were 33-1 shots to win the Super Bowl, right? That was on March 8th, so just 6 days ago. Here we are on March 14th. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have 15-2 odds to win the Super Bowl. That would be tied for the best in the NFL with the Buffalo Bills. So they went from 33-1. The other teams that are 33-1 as we sit right now, they were the Cleveland Browns, the Minnesota Vikings, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Tampa went from one of those teams that's kind of in the middle of the pack, right on the bubble of being in the playoffs or not, to a team that's all the way at the top at 15-2. To give you an idea where the Rams are, the Rams have been at 12-1 since March 7th, okay? Right after they won the Super Bowl on on February 14th, they were at 10-1. The odds have come up a little bit. They now sit at 12-1. But Tom Brady swung this from 33-1 to 15-2 with just one announcement along the way. That's how much of a difference he makes. And that's why it makes such a difference to the Rams, right? They're on this half of the draw. Look at the other teams that are shorter odds for a Super Bowl championship. The Bills are at top. The next two are NFC teams, the two teams that we've talked about a lot, right? Tampa Bay and Green Bay. Those are the two teams, 15-2 and 8-1. So they're very, very close. After that, you've got the Chiefs, the Broncos, the Chargers, the Ravens, the Bengals, just right on down the line. The Arizona Cardinals are in there. The 49ers are in there. But it's mostly AFC teams. And we'll see how these things settle down after free agency is done. But I think that's a big part of why Tom Brady decided to come back. It's not just that he wanted to keep playing football, which he did. It's not that he probably wouldn't mind another, whatever it is, $35, $40 million payday. Who wouldn't, right? It's that the NFC is pretty clear. Rams, Packers, Bucs, and depending on what they do at quarterback, probably the 49ers in there. I know the Cowboys have some numbers in there. I know that the Arizona Cardinals have some numbers in there. But where they are, I don't really see it at all. Those are the teams, injuries and free agency and draft and all that stuff. It's gonna move this stuff around a little bit. But you look at the AFC, whether it's Kansas City, whether it's Buffalo, whether it's Baltimore, whether it's the Bengals, who are the defending AFC champions, whether it's a team like the Chargers, who you would expect to be better. Maybe the Broncos are going to be a better team on this upcoming season. We'll see how it goes in New England, whether or not they continue to get better. The AFC is a absolute logjam of really good teams. And I think Tom Brady sniffed that out and looked at it, and I think the odds bear that out pretty well, that this is an opportunity for them to go back to the Super Bowl, to win the Super Bowl, and certainly add an 8th Super Bowl title to his resume. It would be pretty extraordinary. It also means that the Rams are in the pretty good mix too, because you look at where they are, they didn't move much. It's not like all of a sudden Tom Brady went in and the Rams dropped. Tom Brady went in and the Bucs jumped up, but the Rams kind of sat right where they were all along, which is, you know, just outside the top 4 or 5 in teams as far as the best odds go. They're in a pretty good spot right there, and I think it'll continue. What gets really interesting is when you look at some of these MVP odds. These are the 2022 regular season MVP odds. Again, these numbers provided by BetOnline. The favorite is Josh Allen at 15-2. Sure, why not? I mean, we saw the way that he played at the end of the season. We saw the way that he played in the postseason. So I think Josh Allen is probably a pretty good bet right there. Tom Brady went from OTB off the board to number 2, 9-1. He jumped all the way right back up to 9-1, the second best odds as you look across the board. You know who else's numbers just went from nowhere to third best in the league? Put it this way, tied with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is 10-1, okay? Patrick Mahomes is 10-1. You know who else is at 10-1 right now? Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson didn't play any football last year for obvious reasons, but it does appear that his legal situation is getting a little bit more clear than it was a little while ago, that there will not be a criminal case, that this is going to be litigated civilly if it gets litigated at all, if he can't, what's the word I'm looking for, settle these things along the way. But Tom Brady's at 9-1, who wasn't in the league 2 days ago. Deshaun Watson is at 10-1, who didn't play a single snap last year because of all the legal situations. And you got to go down a ways. There's Matthew Stafford, the best Rams choice, at 18-1. It's all quarterbacks. I'm trying to find Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry, both 33-1, are the first 2 non-quarterbacks to show up at that point. Trey Lance at 33-1 as well. So pretty interesting how Tom Brady, just one guy, has come in and swung this, and didn't really affect Matthew Stafford's odds all that much. 16-1 down to 18-1, so maybe it dropped him a little bit. But Brady is a big swinging you-know-what when it comes into these things, so he changed those odds pretty well, but still love where the Rams are for that. All right, coming up next, I want to talk about Evan McPherson and the Super Bowl halftime show. I know it's been a minute, and I know it's a story in the moment, but this is the story that apparently the Cincinnati Bengals just can't let go. That's coming up, but not until I tell you about my pals at Rock Auto, right? Look around. Next time you're on the road, next time you're in a parking lot or whatever, look at all the different numbers and makes and models in car. How are you supposed to find what you're looking for? How is the local chain store supposed to have everything that you know? They don't, is the short answer. That's why you got to go to Rock Auto. Rock Auto is a family business. They've been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, and the prices are reliably low for every single customer. They have everything you could think of, things like brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil. They even have new carpet for your car, right? Go check out whatever it is you might need. Go to rockauto.com. Go explore their easy-to-use website today and find the solution for your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts that are available for your car or truck, and write "Locked On" in the "How did you hear about us" box so they know that we sent you over there. Don't forget that. "Locked On" in the "How did you hear about us" box. It's good for you. It's good for us. It's good for them. It's good for everybody. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Okay, so we've spent a ton of time on Locked On Rams. And by the way, thanks for making Locked On Rams a regular part of your podcast listening habits. If you're a newbie to Locked On Rams, welcome. Glad to have you here. Make sure you click that subscribe button both in your podcast feed and your Locked On Rams YouTube feed. So the halftime show at Super Bowl 56. Fantastic, right? Just one of the rare times you're going to see a halftime show that was pretty much universally liked. I'm sure there's some guy, some woman out there that's got a bad attitude that doesn't like anything, so they didn't like it. But generally speaking, you're talking Snoop, you're talking Dr. Dre, Kendrick Lamar, Eminem, Mary J. Blige. It's 50 Cent hanging upside down from some very well-anchored apparatus, apparently. So it was great. And the setting of it all, the flashing lights, it was a great, great show. And everybody that was in the building, my hands up in the air, absolutely loved it. I loved it. I thought it was really cool. And even Evan McPherson, who was playing in Super Bowl 56, loved it as well. You remember the videos, right? You remember seeing him out there, his head bobbing along, kind of doing his thing, taking in the show like everyone else. And it was different to see an active player not in the locker room in the middle of the Super Bowl with the rest of his team, as opposed to out there enjoying the show, like, you know, some guy picking up a beer and having a nice time. But here's the rub. Evan McPherson is one of the best kickers in football. 28 out of 33 during the regular season, 46 of 48 on PATs. He made all 4 of his 14 field goals in the postseason. He had game-winning field goals in back-to-back games to send the Bengals to the Super Bowl. He made all of his kicks in the Super Bowl. And yet when he was asked about it, I shouldn't say when the special teams coordinator was asked about it, Darren Simmons, he said, that's a sore subject. That's a real sore subject. Still, I mean, it's not like the guy watched the halftime show and then went out there and missed the kick. He didn't Scott Norwood the thing. He didn't Gary Anderson the thing, okay? He watched the halftime show. He went out there. He made his kick in the second half. He was the reason you were in the Super Bowl in large part to begin with. Maybe you let it go. I get it. It's against your football coach. Yeah, we're all in here together, and we're going to make sure that everybody's pulling on the same end of the rope, and we're going to – I get it, okay? He's the kicker. This is the same guy that you would ostracize if he missed a kick. This is the same guy that stands on the sidelines during practice every day working on his golf swing or playing video games or whatever it is the kickers do when the real football players are doing their thing. I've been doing this job, maybe not Locked on Rams exactly, but I've been covering pro sports, the NFL, for the better part of 30 years. Let me just tell you the cold, hard facts about this. The kickers are barely on the team. To call them specialists barely begins to cover what it is that they do. They are wildly important. And if you have a bad one, you are dead meat. If you have a good one, it is the ultimate weapon. But these guys do not bleed and sweat and cry and break bones and sacrifice their brains and do all the things that all of the other football players do. They're specialists. They come in, they kick their field goals, and they go play golf. Why do you think that Tahoe tournament every summer is filled with former kickers? Because they have time to go do it. They are specialists, and he's one of the very best specialists there are. I don't know why this is still something that is sticking in the craw of Bengals special team. It's not like he missed the kick. Get over it. It's fine. He didn't do anything wrong. He wanted to go watch Snoop do his thing. He wanted to watch Eminem and Dr. Dre. Who didn't? It was super fun. If you had a chance, I get it. Were they going to plan to come out and do something with the opening kickoff that nobody thought that was going to happen? The second half kickoff, which, by the way, they weren't even kicking off. The Rams kicked off to start the second half. What did you want him to do? Stand there and go, oh, okay, good. Yeah, we're going to make sure that we get that weak side line. Yeah, that's not for me. Well, we're going to make sure that on third down we're more. Yeah, well, that's not for me. What do you need me to do? Kick it between those two giant yellow sticks? Yeah, got it covered. I won't miss one. I absolutely promise it'll happen for sure. I don't understand why they're still holding on to that. And look, maybe, who knows? The Rams are Super Bowl champions, and their kicker went into the locker room, and maybe that's the only reason they got it done. Maybe it has nothing to do with Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford and Aaron Donald and Von Miller and all those guys playing lights out. Maybe it's because their kicker went into the halftime locker room and didn't watch Mary J. Blige sing a song. Maybe that's what it is. Come on, man. I love football as much as the next guy, but can we please focus on the things that are important? And this is decidedly one of the things that is not important. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked on Rams. Again, my name is Travis Rogers. Thanks for checking us out. And if you're new, welcome. Make it a habit. Click that subscribe button along the way. Thanks for making Locked on Rams your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked on NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It too is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Jalen Ramsey had some comments about Christian Kirk going to the Jacksonville Jags, another NFC West wide receiver leaving the division. We'll get into that on the next edition of Locked on Rams. Until then, whose house? It's Locked on Rams' house.